I think one person who singularly had this commitment of building this geospatial ecosystem is nobody other than Sanjay Kumar. Every time that I come back to an annual event, certainly the numbers grow, and more importantly, the content becomes richer. The fact that he has now released a report, a research report on this industry, speaks in volumes about his commitment and the passion he has. Congratulations, Sanjay. Keep doing the good work for this industry to prosper. What I will do in the next 10 or 12 minutes of time that I have in front of me is to talk about what I believe is where the GIS industry is, and what do I see for the future of the GIS industry in years to come. Sanjay introduced me that, I started this company called, I'm currently the executive chairman of Cyient, but I'm also the founder of Cyient. I started the company in 1991. And several of my colleagues are also here in the gathering today, I believe. And one thing they'll all vouch for is what I always said, is it's just human imagination which is the limitation in terms of what applications GIS can be put to. It's us to think about what more we can do as opposed to what is there for us to go and apply. This is not like servicing our existing customers. You need to go and find the new customers. You need to create a new marketplace. That is how the GIS industry has evolved over a period of time. There are few of us in the early 90s, including my dear friend Dr. K.K. Singh from Rolta, who also had the vision in starting up a GIS company. But there were not many of us. Few of us took this risk, and we had a passion to say that, GIS has the future for life. So therefore, like entrepreneurs, you start taking a path which is different from others. You take a path where you have passion in. You take a path where you think technologies will play a very important role. So my company took that path, built an industry over the last 25 years. This year, I believe, is our 25th year, and built a company which is about 3,000 crores on revenue, or about $445 million in the dollar terms. But what constantly came to my mind is whatever I used to think about as the future always came true. What I thought 10 years back would come true, came true. So therefore, my belief is what I think about the future of this industry 10 years from now will also be true. So therefore, the first point I'd like to make to all of you is that it's the human imagination which is the limitation in terms of GIS applications. Let me get to my second point. My belief is that as we move forward, the acceleration of implementation of GIS will become faster. Or one favorite statement of mine, velocity of implementation will become higher. There's no denying that the predictability of technology is coming down, but all the same, the sum total of it is you will see more and more of these applications happening in coming years. What is the key driver for it? The key driver to me is all about the disruptive technologies that are there. Disruptive technologies are, by definition, technologies which disrupt the existing businesses. They're not inventions. There could be technologies which are already in existence, but you put them together to provide an innovative solution which will disrupt the existing players. And these technologies which are there, which are coming into play at this point of time, certainly provide tremendous amount of impetus to the GIS industry in coming years. Where am I betting on? Nothing will surprise many of you. Is that one is that the SMAC stack, as it's called, social, mobility, analytics, and cloud. Excuse me. And in addition to the SMAC stack, I also believe Internet of Things, automation, drones, these are the technologies which will further accelerate the way in which the geospatial technology will become mainstream. And what is the reason why there's so much amount of application of these technologies is constantly we're seeing three things. One is connectivity is improving across the world. We'll come to India in a moment. The second one is cost of computing is dramatically reducing. And the third one is these devices called the Internet of Things, or as I call them as Internet of Everything, are also becoming cheaper. Cheaper to the extent that they can be used for any application and every application that you can imagine yourself. So therefore, what we see is that disruptive technologies will play a very important role in speeding up the GIS implementation. Currently, when the first internet revolution happened, there were about a billion people who were connected on the internet with the fixed lines. When mobile phones came in, there were 2 billion people who were connected together. With Internet of Things, today the predictions are we would have 30 billion people and things that will be connected by 2020. Now, with that type of connectivity that you will see, you can imagine the type of applications that can be put to use. Take two very disruptive businesses that have come in the recent past, Uber and Airbnb. Look at what the backbone for them is. It's GIS. It's the location. It's the location-based services that come in. People start talking about, describe what Uber is. A taxi provider? No. Taxi aggregator? No. It actually is a technology platform which has disrupted the taxi industry, not in one country, not in one city, across the world. And so is the case with Airbnb. You can find your room where it is, where and how big is the room, what are the interior, even internal details. So the result is that if you look at disruptions that are happening in businesses, a backbone to them will be technologies driven by GIS. A third point I'd like to make is, given what we are at this point of time, Indian government could become a big propeller for the GIS technology to get implemented in this country. We have seen the economic report placed in the parliament earlier this week or late last week, where talked about the sizable amount of protectionism that comes from all around the world and the need for the domestic industry to start shaping well. To give you a flavor, the IT industry today has 70% of the revenues coming from overseas, and less than 30% comes from India. If you actually take the hardware out and also take the e-commerce out, it comes to a much smaller percentage. So there's a need for encouraging GIS implementation within the country. And I think there are very nice initiatives that the government is talking about. As latest as yesterday, the Honorable Finance Minister of India talked about creating a national land record modernization program. Of course, yes, we have some concerns about the amount of money that got allocated to this particular project. He said 125 crores, or probably it will translate to about $20 or $25 million. Would that be good enough? But the fact that they're making those steps gives us a directional pointer that they're moving in the positive direction. We missed Mr. Suresh Prabhu today in the meeting, but I'd like to congratulate him for what he did in his railway budget. I'm sure most of you read, he talks about Wi-Fi enabled services, integrated mobile applications, e-commerce platforms, barcoded tickets, and most importantly, he says, project management through use of drone and geospatial-based satellite technology. So the government certainly has a number of initiatives that are going on. And the next one is the initiative which is to do with smart cities. While no denying at all, to make a city smart, the infrastructure is required. But more importantly, to plan the smartness of a city in terms of its infrastructure, what you require is the ability to have the whole thing in your geospatial databases. We need to have a good ICT platform, coupled with it a GIS layer, in order to start planning, saying that how do we make this city smart? Cities have networks. Networks of power distribution system, they have water, they have sewer, they have cable, you name them. They're all networks of stuff. And all these networks can become more efficient only when you use GIS technologies. Because these networks of assets that are there have only one thing in common, and that is positioning. Nobody knows, a power company does not have a clue about where are their poles, except they know a geographic positioning of them. They don't have in their own premises. So therefore, a third initiative which is to do with the smart cities certainly will go a long way in making sure the GIS gets implemented quite intensely in this country. On behalf of NASSCOM, I'm sure we worked with AIG, which is the Association of Geospatial Professionals, or Association of Indian Geospatial Professionals. We produced a report. We did this as a part of the smart cities. The government certainly had lots of positive things to talk about it. My recommendation to all of you is we need to take this forward, because the GIS layer is extremely important to make sure that we realize our dreams about smart cities. Lastly, in terms of the government initiatives, there are other things which are going on, which are Digital India, Make in India, Skill India. There's so many of them are there. And each one of them have an interplay with geospatial technologies. You look at Digital India. Digital India has primarily three core components. One is the infrastructure, the second is the service delivery, and the third one is literacy. And starting point itself, when you talk about infrastructure for Digital India, you need to have a GIS backbone to make sure you do that planning. If you want to do the service delivery, you need to have that backbone. If you want to think about whom do I make literate, you also need to have the GIS technologies underlying it. So my third point, therefore, is the future looks bright because the Indian government have some steps directionally at this point of time to make sure that we have tremendous amount of opportunity to move India to a different league. My fourth point is safety and security is very critical for a nation. And one way of ensuring that is again using GIS technologies. One could always call it as a part of the initiatives from the government itself, but I felt that this is so important in the current days and times that we live. We think there is a tremendous amount of emphasis on that particular area. We have cyber security as a challenge. But if we were to do this cyber security, we need to know where our servers are, where are they located, and how well or ill-equipped they are in terms of security. We have safety as a major issue. Traditionally, what we have seen is more amount of navigation applications brought in safety. Road safety was a key thing that was on. But today, if you look at safety, there are so many disasters that keep happening, whether it is a flood, a famine, and so on and so forth. For all of these, if you want to go back and address the people, provide them the support, what we need is the geospatial technology, and definitely you find that it is the most relevant to make sure that you get immediate help. Today, there is a initiative called the EMRI, Emergency Management Care. I was seeing some numbers in the last few days. After EMRI got implemented in this country, we have 10 lakhs of lives which are saved every year. And EMRI again works on a GIS backbone. So the future lies in terms of making sure that we have these applications. And lastly, the last point I had to make was that I'm a very firm believer, a combination of ICT, geospatial technology, and the disruptive technologies. These three things are there. ICT, geospatial plus disruptive technologies can provide a social equalizer for this nation.